Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Scott Simmons from Benton Scott Simmons, and I'm here tonight with my colleagues Janet and Kira, and we are part of Work Group 2. You'll begin to understand now that this is a really exciting project. It's a large project, and we're all passionate about it, so the chances of me sticking to 10 minutes is going to be zilch. But I'm going to have to, because the important thing that we actually want to do is to have an opportunity to get out on site. So we were involved with, as Derek has explained, a really exciting part of the city. So they're maybe not as typical as some of the other transport, maybe more transport dominated corridors, but look at this in terms of the development of the city, how the West End developed, how it moved towards the Clyde and Canal. All of that developed industrial, and then it became residential, a really tight-knit, compact, urban form with tenements, etc., vibrant communities. And then what happened? Well, we thought we were making progress, and what we need to improve and safeguard the safety of our city is to build the M8 motorway. So in the 1970s, this is what we cleared. But look at the pattern of what we cleared. Look at the space that was taken to get junction 17 in. And this was the way forward, you know. And I have to say, you should look at the photographs and the illustrations available on the website about this, because they do look really interesting, and everyone passionately believed that this was the right way to go. But for us, in looking at this is all about rebuilding, reconnecting, repairing. It's that move from the West End into the city. How long do you think it would take you to walk? Does anyone have a guess? We asked this, we did a workshop with the children in some of the schools, and we said, how long do you think it would take you to walk? And of course, sadly, some of them don't ever walk anywhere, so they had no idea. They said half an hour, or 35, 40 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, it's not far. So for us, the key thing is about reconnecting and repairing this connectivity. But obviously, I mean, we're not going to be able to demolish the M8 motorway just yet, so have to work with that. You'll start to understand that everyone is very passionate about the project, that we have the advantage of being Work Group 2. So that means that Work Group 1, which was Argyle Street, which was led by Urban Movement, they have been through a lot of the initial work. They have set up the guidelines, they have written a design code, they have tested certain situations. So as being a consistent project, where we're not starting from scratch, we're applying some of these. But the interest that we had in the areas that we're looking at is that we have residential areas, we've got retail areas. You can see the sort of the before and after, again emphasising the fact that these were important parts of our city, that these were communities, that they were well loved. And here's where we are now. This is what we've inherited. Some bits that are left over, trying to negotiate some of these spaces. When we did the accessibility walk, when the guide dog is trained to walk to a curb line, well, where does the curb line get you? Because it's infilled. We're trying to encourage people to live independently in the environment, to go out, to be safe, to be confident. But, it's kind of a bit left over. Of course, actually, underneath the M8, the carriageway, and next to Glasgow School of Art, where the Stowe College, this opens a whole lot of different opportunities, as Derek has already said, about how that space could be used, the connectivity, a creative industries quarter, how the arts students want to use this space, how the skateboarders currently use that space. But the first thing that came up in the consultation when we discussed this with local residents and the community council was safety. Nobody wanted to walk this way. This is where, there were drug deals. There was an issue in the press where from this very spot, someone tried to, bundle a young girl into the back of a van. Because if you're in a car from here, you can virtually exit the city in any direction. However, we want to improve all of that. So it's about how we actually apply these principles to the space. And as Derek has already said, and in one of the slides, we were talking about this was formerly a Millennium Space that was created with the statue. It was a little green space at Pocket Park. The underground, again, St George's Cross, lost. People don't always know how to find it or where it is. How can we start to improve this and start to take space away from the vehicle and reallocate that to the pedestrian? And obviously the cyclist, and to make it more inclusive and easier for everybody to use. looking at the principles of segregating different uses. Again, speed of traffic. There's a lot of discussion about, particularly from those with visual impairment, about whether or not they feel safe in some of these environments. Is their perception more than the reality in some respects about cyclists whizzing past, or they can't see them, they don't feel them. The Dutch have two words for cyclists. I was kind of hoping that Mark van Griepen would be here tonight because he could pronounce it correctly and I can't. But basically one is a wheel runner, which is the commuter, the lycra-clad, head down, commuting. The other one is talking about more recreational, sitting upright, you're taking cognizance of who's around you and you're respecting who's around you and you can share the space that's available. Derek's already shown you this slide, but I think what's always interesting is actually looking at it in the context of what you've got now to understand how you're trying to redistribute this space and prioritise it better, with better uses, allowing the retail and creating a better entrance for the subway. We have been working in the same way as Gary had mentioned with Nick Smith lighting, and the idea here is to look at 24/7, how can we use lighting to improve the environment, to help contribute to the legibility. Again, consistency, so that you know you're on an avenue, that you've got consistent low-level lighting or high-level lighting. There are a number of things that all need to work together to look at this. Crossing the roads, again, we were trying to establish consistent ways of dealing with that. You come across at grade, so if you're in a wheelchair or if you have a buggy, a pram, the priority is the vehicle has to slow down. Again, that change in vertical alignment, you're over and across, but it's prioritising the pedestrian. New City Road for us is one of the areas that gives us quite a bit of leeway to try some of these new things we're looking at. We have talked about the fact that the rain gardens didn't go into the pilot scheme in Sauchiehall Street. We do have a technical trial of the rain gardens currently being carried out in Washington Street, but that's looking at the substrate. This is a particular occasion where we have the space and we can reclaim space from the vehicle to actually have quite an extensive rain garden. This is a residential area, we've got the school nearby, we've got the opportunity for new development with the students coming on board. So this area is going to pick up and become more lively, but again keep on the direct route through to that connection, which brings us to Cowcaddon's underground station. We had looked at Phoenix Road as well, and in terms of the grid, sort of looking what's actually happening, what flows underneath this, the superstructure for the M8. And this is where, with Glasgow School of Art being in the Stoke College, looking at, you probably recognise this Gushit building, it's quite distinctive, the Chinese supermarket, the PDSA. There's a lot of change in this area, and it's quite exciting because there's a lot of opportunity, and as Derek has said, Glasgow School of Art and Glasgow City Council are working together to look at how this can be improved. Again, looking at this, look at what you've got, what it is at the moment, but of course to achieve this, what we're actually doing is taking this lane off. So we need to have the conviction to actually reduce traffic. And when we put this to the traffic engineers, there's always a slight reluctance. But the issue is, if we actually want to work through with this, we have to have the courage to actually mean it. So what we're talking about here is a 40% reduction in the traffic in the city centre. What does that look like? Does that mean we can achieve this? And can we do that in one jump? Or do we maybe have to implement some of this in stages? Are we going to get it right first time? There are lots of things that we need to work through. And also, these, remember, are RIBA Stage 2, it's concept design. So there's some issues we need to look at the practicalities, because these are private parking spaces. And obviously, we can't use private land, we can only develop this in public land. So part of the application of all of these ideas is to look at how do we achieve it. But also we want to whet people's appetite. We want them to want this. When we go to the communities and discuss this, we're trying to show them, raise their aspirations, show them what is possible. Again, looking at the before and the after, because unless you know where Cowcaddon subway station is, you don't know that it's down and underneath here. And really, in practical terms, we wanted to have the most direct line, but we can't achieve the most direct line because it's private land and car parking, etc. So we're going to have a slight meander in that. But again, it's how can we use lighting to maybe activate the underpass. There's a lot of work being done on the Argyle Street projects. Again, you can look online, the treatment of the Highlandman's umbrella. So looking at this becomes a very sort of important transitional space, because you come under the underpass, through Cowcaddens and another underpass, and this is bringing you then up onto Cambridge Street, and that is your direct line into the city centre. Again, these are areas that have a very strong community, and this is quite a mix of uses, because on one hand you've got Doubletree Hilton Hotel, you've got American tourists, Chinese tourists coming out of the hotel and sort of thinking, where the hell am I? Where's the city centre? The quality of this particular space, we need to improve on that. There's an opportunity to do more. So looking at this may be one of the early streets. I think, Derek, would that be correct to say? That this may actually be one of the first streets that is sort of out of the starting blocks and implemented on the ground. But what we have been doing is applying all the things that we've talked about, you've heard the others talk about, using trees. Trees are used as part of our SUD system, as part of that integrated system, slowing the water getting into the sewers. It's as simple as that. We've employed rain gardens where we can, but a lot of the streets that we're working on are heavily pedestrian, and there's as much north-south movement as there is east-west. So we have actually adapted permeable paving and the drain joint, which we can see out on site in the pilot scheme, to give better environment for the trees. Again, we've had a look at this. This is how it could potentially look. Zoning is very important, again, for accessibility, making sure that we've got the zone that's safe for the cyclists, the zone that's safe for the pedestrians, and developing areas for retail and coffee culture. That's the sort of a principal idea. Coming down into Sauchiehall Street, the important issue here is to extend the precinct. Now, some of you may remember that actually Sauchiehall Street was one of Glasgow City Council's Millennium projects. 1988, this is what we were doing. I don't know that all of us will remember the dates prior to that, but 1988 was the first time that Sauchiehall Street was pedestrianised. Then there was a competition, and Ferguson McElveen, at that particular point in time, a multidisciplinary practice with architects, landscape architects and engineers, won that. This is what it looked like in reality. This is what we've ended up with now. So, as Derek has already said, getting the right environment for the trees and for our SUDs is incredibly important. These trees have been taken out after 18 years, and as we've mentioned, that really you're not getting your return in trees until much, much later than that. The precinct itself falls into a couple of distinct character areas. The principle that we wanted to achieve here was prioritising the pedestrian. So at the moment the precinct is crossed and the traffic movement, it stops at every junction for the cars. Last time the design team wanted to achieve this. We're hoping this time we will achieve this, because we take that 40% reduction in traffic in the city centre and we prioritise the sustainable transport, the buses. So it gives us an opportunity to reduce some of these carriageways. Shopping has changed, and it has changed, for forever probably. And what we need to do, there's a lot of research on this. Again, Derek stressed how much value we put in looking at precedents, looking at research. The pedestrian pound, this again, how people use a space. It has to be as much as an experience as anything else. We also need to be pragmatic in this. Sauchiehall Street suffered a lot of change over the last couple of years, with various fires, the upheaval with the pilot scheme. The actual retailers on the street are really passionate about the place and wanting to do more, and even safeguarding some revenue so that they can actually maintain this, so that it is of an equivalent quality. Putting in the trees, now what we were talking about is, we did painful as it is to look at the trees and think we've actually got to take these all out. When we actually looked at the root ball, and that was one of the previous slides, when we were able to uncover a bit of the street because of the unfortunate incident of the fire, but turned something bad into something good, it meant we could have a look at the root ball of the trees. The trees that were put in at 20 to 25 centimetre girth had hardly grown out with their original root ball. So this is why we're very keen to make sure that we get it right this time, and looking at much bigger trees, and also looking at a much improved environment, so that this whole area will be use the drain joint. But in this particular instance, we are going to keep this hard. We're not permeable, but hard, because there's so much movement across Sauchiehall Street. So we're not putting as many rain gardens in the main precinct. Completely appropriate to use them elsewhere on New City Road, but less so here, because we want to maximise that amount of pedestrian movement. But equally, we still want to improve the environment for the trees and address some of the issues in Suds. This is looking at what could we do if we could push the roads engineers to take those north-south crossing streets down to one carriageway or two carriageways. Again, it's the subtleties about using materials, about looking as if the street is flowing across the street, but also there's some practical issues about safety, and these probably will still need to be signalised crossings, even though we can reduce the carriageway. Again, we've worked with Nick and his team to look at how we could even use light and create little event spaces, to create little play areas, all to add to this experience, which is part of Sauchiehall Street. We have a legacy. Glasgow, lead. We've done so much work on raising and putting in high quality public realm. This is the next step. So it is exciting. There are lots of great aspirations and things that we are aspiring to achieve, and we have to aim high, because ultimately other people will always try to sort of pull you back. So trees going in, we've talked about this. What we'd like to do obviously is have a chance to go and look at some of this, and I think the plan was, Rachel, wasn't it, that we were going to maybe split into groups and see if you fancied going and just having a quick walk and have a look at some of the work that has been done on Sauchiehall Street to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much.